Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Top Voice Tuesday. It is April 22nd, and I'm super excited to be on with Michelle Merritt. I'm going to give her a chance, as always, to introduce herself. But per the normal introduction, this is a series we've been doing for 4 months now, featuring all of the amazing top voices in this community. And today's no exception. And we're going to have a great conversation about diving into the world of the C-suite, recruiting candidates and all of that. So we're gonna really talk about it. If you've missed past episodes, all of these episodes are available on my YouTube channel, Michael J. Lopez 9. And we've just started our weekly newsletter. You can download from my website. We bring insights from this conversation and everything else together, with a few other insights from my book, which you can see right behind me here. For those of you in the chat, please let us know where you're tuning in from. We'll take a question or two and make sure we read those back to everyone. So thanks for joining in. Michelle Merritt, we're going to talk about the C-suite reboot today and why your resume isn't enough. But before we do that, please tell everyone who you are and how did you get to the top of the Top Voice Mountain?
Oh boy. I feel like some days I'm still climbing, so I don't know that that's a fair question. But my name is Michelle Merritt. I am the Chief Strategy Officer at D&S Executive Career Management. So what do? We guide executive leaders through their resume process as well as their executive search, whether that is job search strategy, interview prep, and compensation negotiation. I personally do a large amount of comp negotiation coaching. It's one of my personal passions. And then we also guide leaders through the board journey, right? So if many of us are at a point in our careers where we're starting to think about paid board roles and what that looks like. So we guide everyone through that same process for their board journeys as well. And then we do some executive outplacements. So that's a little bit about what we do. How did I get to the top of the LinkedIn mountain? Totally by accident. And again, I feel like I'm climbing it every day. Last summer, our executive assistant, she contacted me and said, "Oh my God, you're a LinkedIn top voice." I'm going to be real honest, and forgive me if you're trying real hard to get this and this frustrates you. I didn't know what that was. And I teach people how to build LinkedIn profiles, but I really didn't. I mean, I saw it on other people's profiles, but I didn't think much of it. I can tell you that last summer, I decided to do a project where I posted on LinkedIn every day for 100 straight days. The Friday of Memorial Day weekend to the Monday of Labor Day is typically 100 days long. And I decided to post every single day. I do a personal posting project on Instagram every summer because summer is my favorite season. So I applied it and was very strategic about what I posted about. I had 4 buckets that sort of covered the things I just told you about. Wow. And stuck with those areas. I made sure to kind of mix it up just because I was getting bored, not because it was some grand strategy of video versus some long form text versus images, that kind of thing. So I mixed it up and was consistent. I always say LinkedIn is like good skincare, right? I mean, it almost doesn't matter whether or not you're buying a $500 jar or a $5 jar. What really matters is you're consistently using it and taking care of it every day.
Yeah, that may be the best analogy we've had on this show so far. So you win the award for that.
All right.
I love it. I'm reminded of the episode we did with Craig Leach maybe a month ago or so, and he told a similar story that he had a 60-day plan. He was going to post every day for 60 days. Yours was 100. It's not a contest, Craig, but
Well, but I just won.
Yeah,
not that I'm competitive. Can you tell I'm the oldest of 8? Yeah,
that's right. Wow, oldest of 8. That's great. So I think for those listening, we ask this question and we get an answer every time. And I think you're hearing the themes: consistency, repetition, but mixing it up, bringing different styles, focusing on a core topic, right? And so much of that is what I focus on in the world of change. You can see the book right behind me. This idea that there's nothing really, there's no secret formula other than persistence, repetition, consistency, dedication. And, that's a lot of things. I think something only like 4% of all LinkedIn posts, something like this, come from like 4% of the profiles. It's some
I
crazy
believe it.
number. It's some small number. So, just for everyone who's thinking about trying to climb this mountain, it's one step at a time. And I think that's just a great reminder. We've got some folks coming in, San Juan, Puerto Rico, which is great. We've never had anyone from there. So thanks for
Yay!
and Portland, Maine, and folks from Denver. So we'll take a question here as we go. And we always have Annalie is our single largest fan. She's the best Top Voice Tuesday attendee of all time.
I
So
love
we
it.
really are pleased to have her here. So let's jump in, Michelle, and talk about this issue. Look, everyone wants a high-paying C-suite job. Well, the people that want them spend a lot of time trying to go get them. Let's just put it that way. Everyone doesn't want one of those. What's the biggest myth that executives still believe about how to land a C-suite role today?
What I would tell you is that a lot of people are still doing what they've always done. Right? The myth is that what you've done to get where you are is going to get you where you're going, and it's not going to happen. So, when we talk with executives about their search and their journey, you've arrived to this point in your career. And now the table, where you're at now is just table stakes, as my colleague Deborah always says. So we look at this and we know that you're going to have to jump up. Right? You're going to have to broaden your skills. You're going to have to broaden your network. You're going to have to define your accomplishments and your achievements not only better, but differently. Whether you're talking about a board search, whether you're talking about an executive search, you now have to speak a different language to get to the next opportunity. And it has to be a language that is impactful for the listener, for the reader, right? I always say that your resume is about you, not for you. I did a video that said that, and it went viral a couple of months back. And it's true. Your resume should be highlighting, same with your LinkedIn profile, highlighting what you've accomplished, what you've achieved, what sets you apart, but only in a way that speaks to whoever's on the other end.
You're speaking my language of this idea that, what got you here, the actions you take that got you here are not the same actions that are going to get you to the next step, and sort of doing what we've always done. I mean, that is the essence of change and transformation. And yet we fall back to default behaviors.
I'm as guilty as anyone.
Yeah, sure. And this idea that your resume is about you, not for you, I think is really, really wise. Can you give us an example of maybe a behavior? And I think you did in that summary, but maybe this sort of, what's the kind of landmine that, somebody's trying to land a C-suite role, they're maybe in consideration, and they show up and do X, and then they're out. What does that look like?
I was having this conversation with colleagues just this morning, and one of the things is that we come with our hand out to our network instead of showing up asking how I can help. Right? So you and I both know that networking is a long game, right? And I firmly believe that your network, I live and die by my network. And I firmly believe your network will take you to where you want to go. What we know is 85% of jobs are found through people we know, not through applying on the internet. If you're an executive listening to me right now, for God's sake, stop wasting your time applying on the internet. Instead, opt to leverage your network, right? What does that network look like for you? Can they open doors for you? Be strategic, but don't come with your hand out. Make sure that you are cultivating that network and sort of, growing it, if you will. Again, consistency, it's like skincare. Make sure that you are taking care of that network as you go. So when the day comes that you need something, you can say, hey, I'm really working on this. The other piece of it is asking for what you want, right? And being able to justify why you deserve it. I'll never forget, several years ago, I had a client come to me and say, I want a new role in Silicon Valley and I want to make $350,000. Great. I want you to, people tell me you can teach me how to get that number. Maybe, right? Super happy to do that. Tell me what you've done to earn that role. This is an investment, right? Well, I just want it. And we went back and forth. I swear this was a real conversation.
Right.
We went back and forth. But you have to tell me, we got to sell this, right? I mean, an employer is investing in you, right? By the way, she did not get the offer she wanted, was very frustrated about that. And it is because she couldn't justify why that investment was worth it on behalf of the employer. It's true throughout the entire process, making sure, because again, it's about you, but not for you, right? Really engaging that employer, that board who may be selecting you, and be in charge of that as to why it is that you're the one, and really leveraging that network to help do that and have advocates and champions on your behalf.
We're getting some great comments in the chat about
awesome.
about using the same playbook and leveraging your network. And I have so many analogies or little thoughts in my head. My son is 17. He's in the midst of he plays quarterback, he pitches, so he's a really, really good athlete, and he is in the middle of the recruiting experience. And particularly for quarterbacks, life is tough because it's value is also a function of, do I find someone who fits what I want to do? It's not just how far you throw or how fast you run, but there's a whole story around, are you someone that fits with what we're trying to do in our program? And so he may want a certain experience, but that group or that person or that coach on the other side has to value what you do, right? And understanding how to tell that story, I think, is really so interesting. It's like buying a house, right? They say, the value of your house is what someone's willing to pay for it. And that's different for everybody, right? And so this idea of how we explain that. I want to jump into this idea of skills for a minute, because you've talked about earning it, you've talked about what you're worth, you've talked about what you do, and you've talked about impact. And we all know the metrics, right? We all know, I ran a company X, we did X millions of revenue and growth and all of this. One of the things that bugs me is this phrase, soft skills. We talked about this.
It's your pet peeve, I know.
It is, because they're the hardest things that we do. Outside of the metrics and the measurables, what's changing about the role of soft skills in the executive C-suite game?
Yeah. So I think it's always been there, and we're in a unique position in the job market right now, right? We've seen some pretty big, we've seen the pendulum sort of swing in very big directions.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that,
especially in the last several months. We're going to get to that, I'm sure. But what I would say is this: those soft skills are really, you can ditch that word if you want to, and talk about demonstrated leadership. Right. You were referring to your son, right? When I think about a football quarterback, and my brothers played football, I think about the person who's tasked with leading the team, right? He or she may still be out there throwing a football, and they've got to have good tactical skills, and they've got to have the data, right, to show that they can throw all the way down the field and all of that sort of thing. But what they have to do more than anything is unite a group of people to achieve that. Right. And so there's a real balance between saying I and we counsel people on this all the time. Women tend to be guiltier of it than men, where we use we all the time instead of taking credit. Number one, we want to take credit, but also I'll remind people as well that we not only want to take credit for the work, but we want to talk about how we've led the team to do the work. Right. So we don't want to be so focused on I that we sound like we suddenly scaled an organization, 4x to 2.1 billion in revenue. Nobody does that by themselves. And you're fooling yourself if you think you have. That said, we want to make sure that we're also talking about how the team you've led, what you've done to foster that culture, that sort of thing. So you are talking about more of those relationship-based skills, things like that, because you can be a hard driving, difficult CEO. It may get some short-term results.
Works for a while. Yeah. There's a trail of bodies behind you, but
there's a trail of bodies behind, right? And whether you are, attacked by your board or by the media or by the public or by your team, it will eventually fail.
Yeah. Yeah, I love this. That's a great analogy, and I want to dig into that a little more. I mean, look, I played college football as well. I say this all the time. Every great thing I've learned about being a leader and a
Mhm.
teammate came and started with that experience. And so, just as an aside, I also played quarterback, and my son's way better than me. But I will also say that it's the
That's
hardest position.
impressive that you admit it.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
love that.
I have no question. There's a little picture behind me. You can see that we've
Yeah.
done. That's him, and there's me. It's like superimposed.
Oh,
He's
that's
like
cool.
6'1". I'm like a shrimp. I'm 5'7". So that's the first starting point. But um, this idea that we want to take credit and give credit is such an
Mhm.
interesting concept because we're told, and we'll just keep with this analogy, right? When we fail, it's my responsibility. When we win, we did it together, right?
Right.
That's a hallmark of, at least in
Leadership.
the sports world, but
Mhm.
of leadership in a lot of ways. So how do we tell that story when we're putting it in our resume, right? How do we express this balance without seeming too arrogant, but also giving away too
Mhm.
much?
And so I think when we're talking about the resume, we're talking about a couple things. Think like a recruiter, think like the reader, right? Again, about you, not for you. So think about the reader. What do they need to know? So if someone on my team, and we have a team of 15 writers and coaches, if someone on my team is writing your executive resume, they may be putting a key accomplishment section or a career highlights section toward the top of that document. Well, I always say above the fold because now I'm dating myself to referencing newspapers, right? But where we really want to highlight those big career wins, right? Those big game wins, if you will, if we're staying with football. And what
Mm,
are those and what did that
yeah,
look like? So we may be talking about how we scaled an organization or we drove an acquisition, something like that. And then we're including some data as well, but we're also talking about the size of the team, things like that. And then we're
mm,
crafting that story as we're talking to our network, as we're interviewing, right? Because the interview at the executive level is a conversation. I always caution people,
mm,
if at an executive level you are told that they're going to ask 5 questions and you get to ask 3 and then the conversation's over, that is at best a yellow flag for me, if not a red flag, right? This should
yeah,
be a conversation. So part of the way you tell that story is to weave it into conversations with the interviewers, but also with your network. Remember that your network is going to advocate for you. They are your champions, your sponsors. They are the people who are going to say, you need to go talk to Michelle Merritt or you need to talk to Michael Lopez because of X, Y, and Z. You're equipping your advocacy team with the information they need to tell your story.
yeah. I one of the things I say all the time is the best way to talk about yourself is have someone else do it.
Mhm.
Right. And so when someone else can say, I just had a client that I worked with last year and a half ago when I first started, and they connected me with
Yeah.
someone else, and they basically said we've got a challenge. We've had a leadership team in place for the last 10 years. They're very good at the job they have today. We're at the front end of 5 years of explosive market growth, and they don't know how to do that job. And
Right.
so one of my former clients said, "You got to call Michael."
Mhm.
This, and so that started and then it was a
Sure.
conversation, right? So I just love this idea of it's about conversations. It's about having the data and being able to share the stories, but context
Mhm.
matters. So tell us then, when you've talked about what's the organization looking for when there's so many great candidates, right? How do they distinguish between, we're talking about the upper
Right.
crust, right? This is the top single digit percent of candidates. What are they looking for? And then you use this phrase red flag. Like, what are the landmines, right,
Mhm.
when you're at that tier?
Yeah. So we always remind people that you need to be able to not only define but succinctly communicate your unique value proposition, what we shorten to UVP. Right? So whether we are working
Mm,
with a client who is going for his or her next C-level opportunity, or we're working with a client who is seeking board appointment with a NYSE listed company. What we know is we've got to make sure that that unique value proposition is defined. Those of you who know me have probably heard my colleague Deborah say this a lot of times. The traditional 20, I have 20 years of experience driving transformation in X is table stakes. No one cares. Stop saying it. Right. Instead, we
right.
have to really define what sets you apart from your peers, right?
Mm.
So what does that look like for you? What makes you unique from the other potential candidates for those opportunities? And really defining that clearly. On a resume, we're likely going to put that definition in the top summary of your resume. We're going to define it early on in your executive bios, in your LinkedIn profiles, all of those things. But it's also a matter of articulating it in a way that is conversational and not in a way that is rehearsed, right? People will ask me sometimes, hey, can you do a mock interview with me? Only if you force me, right? Because I
Wow.
want you to think on your feet. I want you to have a conversation. We are professional grown-ups at the top of our game, right? So that means we have to really be able to articulate and converse in a way that communicates to the other person, to the listener, to the reader, why it is we're the one, and really begin to engage at that level. And I'll go back to it every time. Your network is also going to advocate for why you're different.
Yeah. Yeah. What's the fastest way to get kicked out of the room?
I would say showing up unprepared.
Mm.
And this came up just recently too. Someone got on a call with us, was just not prepared. Wasn't even, and I don't expect you to be in a suit when you hop on a call with me, right? But I do expect that you're going to be dressed, right?
That's a good
Right? Or
starting
I
point. Yes.
expect that
Yes.
you're going to not be so distracted, right? That you can't sit down and have the conversation you made the appointment for. Recruiters feel the same
Yeah.
way, all of that. So really remembering that every single person in you that you come in contact with is part of this process, and every one of them has a say so. Because when you sit down and have a conversation with me, I have a giant network of executives and board members who I may or may not be willing to make a call on your behalf for. Right?
Yeah.
So showing up ill
Yeah.
prepared, I think, is one of the worst things you can do. It will trip you up in the interview. All of that.
I'll just
Yeah.
stick with the analogy a little bit. I tell this to my son, and particularly when you're a quarterback, but as an executive, right? Everybody's always
Mhm.
watching. And I think it's important to remind yourself that, and this isn't to create some sort of, stress induced freak out moment where you're, panicked and anxious, but the micro moments and the small things matter, because I think, to your point, I don't think I know, to your point, we've all earned the right. We've done the
Mhm.
big stuff. You're here because you've demonstrated that you're in the top X
Right.
percent. And so the question is, it's sort of this idea that the better you get, the harder it is to get
Mhm.
better, right? Like, it takes more effort for smaller returns. And I think so much of this is really what you're
Mhm.
talking about, right? It's sort of fine grain
Mhm.
work at the tip of this experience. I would love, anyone's got a question for Michelle. We've got a few minutes left, so I want to make sure we get a
Absolutely.
chance to address any of those. I think people are really getting a ton of value out of
Good.
this. I mean, this is like a master class in sort of building your
Mhm.
profile and making, kind of taking the next step.
Can I throw out
I
can I
want
throw
to
out
talk.
one more mistake
Yeah,
that I think I would love to just
yes,
make
please. We
sure
love mistakes.
that people are aware of?
Yeah.
Because it is my personal passion, is negotiation. Right? And I
Oh,
know we didn't plan to talk about compensation negotiation today, but
mm,
just real
let's
quickly,
do it.
making sure that you know from the very first conversation with the recruiter, with the hiring manager, that you are prepared to talk about numbers. And lots of executives say to me when I bring this up, I'm not talking about money that early. Great, that's okay. I'm not asking you to talk about money, but I am asking you to be able to define your value and what you need in exchange for that value. Right?
Mm,
And then as the conversation builds, because it is not a Q&A, it is a conversation, we need to be
yeah.
able to continue to articulate that value to that range that we're anticipating. The other piece I'll add, never give a range when someone asks you what you are looking for in compensation, right? Because if I say I'm looking for 5 to 600 in a base salary, what I'm really telling people is I'll take 500. Right? And so
Right.
I've already nixed any opportunity to have that 600. So, and then we start building the negotiation from there. But thank you for letting me add that
Yeah.
little bit in.
I love that, and I wanted to ask about another red flag, or
Mhm,
at least maybe come back to the
mhm.
resume a little bit, because that in and of itself, I mean, I think you're talking. It's not like on paper anymore. It's not. I mean, we
Often it's
have
digital.
resumes, but these things have evolved, and I'm fascinated about this balance of, are you talking about the artifact itself, the actual words on a couple pages that we use to describe our experience, and how, what's changed about that template
Yeah.
format, that story, because it's such an archaic, in some ways,
It is,
artifact, but it's still
right.
here, right?
So people have to know people can only know what we've done when we tell them. Right? People will say to me all the time, "Well, I have a great LinkedIn profile, so I don't need a resume." Or, "I have a great resume, I don't need LinkedIn, I don't care about social media." Right? We have to find those
Mm,
balances in there.
right.
Some companies are gonna ask for a CV or a resume. Some companies are gonna ask for a bio only. Some boards are going to ask for a specific type of resume versus a bio. You have to be prepared, and the higher you go, the more advanced you become in your career, the more people expect you to be prepared with all of these documents, right?
Wow.
So, yes, resumes can be an archaic sort of document. What has really changed in the resume game is that we are talking about accomplishments and achievements. It is no longer a bullet pointed list of your job description. And it is
Yeah.
also a little bit more succinct than it has been in the past, depending on the industry, right? When we're talking about government, that's an entirely different ball game. So unfortunately, our friends who are finding themselves exiting government roles, that's its own unique challenge to shift that
Yeah.
resume. But when we're talking about an executive resume, we are talking about something that represents you correctly, is branded in a way that represents you, whatever you feel like that may mean. Right. And that's where working
Mm.
with a coach, working with an executive writer, things like that, we make sure that the document looks like something that presents you correctly. Right. If you are the CEO
Yeah.
of a major bank versus someone who is working in fashion and fashion marketing, we're going to have two very different looking documents more than likely.
Right. Right. I was thinking as you were describing that, and again,
Yeah.
just a ton of value in that answer of, I wish I had my first resume. That would be a funny thing to
Right.
look at. I actually remember it. I printed it
You
right
would
on
be surprised at the
this.
number of executives who are still building on that first resume that they have
Oh my
either
God.
got from
Yeah.
career services their senior year of college or right out of business school, something like that. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
Wow.
it's you'd be shocked
That's,
at the number of those resumes we still
yeah.
receive from people who are 30 years into their career.
Well, it's like saving your first driver's license.
Right,
That's a that's a fun little artifact. We're coming to
yeah.
the end, and I want to remember, you have a bonus
Yeah,
question. We always ask that. So
and you
I'm
didn't tell me what it
excited to
was, so
give
I've
you.
been a little nervous about this.
It could
Yeah,
be anything. I just want to summarize and help bring all of this great value into perspective. So, what are the three things you want people to take away from this conversation of the C-suite reboot? Why your resume isn't cutting it anymore, and you need to level up to land this new executive role. What do you want people to
right.
take away from this
Number
conversation?
1, know where you're headed. Right? And the unique value it takes to get you that you bring to that destination. Number 2, leverage that network, right? Build those champions, those advocates. One of the best things about the resume writing process or the bio or the LinkedIn writing process is it forces you to take stock in all you've done, so now you can easily articulate it to easy for me to say, right? Easily articulate that to, your colleagues, to employers, things like that. And the last one is just put yourself out there. The number of people who say to me, "I am afraid to post on LinkedIn. I'm afraid to update my profile," things like that. What if someone doesn't like what I've said? Well, you're not for everybody. None of us are. There just step out there and do it.
I love that. And we're going to talk about that
Mhm.
conversation here. And we've got a couple episodes coming up
Yeah.
about that, about your unique story. And I just love the way you captured that for everyone. Um,
Yeah.
before we go, your
Yeah.
question that was
Yeah.
left for you, which I really enjoy, and this is going to be good, is, Michelle, what is one belief or idea that you have recently changed your view on?
Okay.
And what's one idea or belief for you that you'll never change your
Okay.
point of view on?
A belief I have changed my point of view on is that I'm obligated to say yes. Right? No is a complete sentence, and it doesn't require an explanation.
I
Right?
love that.
So that's probably what has changed in my professional adult life. There was a time, and I think we all go through that as young professionals, thinking we got to say yes to every project, every networking opportunity, every cocktail hour, you don't. And maybe it's earning, getting to this level in your career that allows you the ability to say no a little easier. So that's that one. And then as far as what I will always continue to say yes to and believe in, it's my network. It's the power of my network, and not only my obligation to show up for them, but then the outcomes that are from my continuing to cultivate that network and the priority that they are.
I love that. And really a lot of great comments in the
Awesome.
chat about being inspired and
Thanks.
energized. And I think there's so many really tactical strategies that you've given to the folks tuning in. Michelle, where can everyone, obviously
Right.
on LinkedIn, find you, and anything you'd like to offer up to folks that are watching
Yeah.
before we
So
go?
you can check out our website, dscareermanagement.com. Don't forget to add the E in management. I type too fast and always tend to leave that out for some reason. So take it from me, careermanagement.com. So you can find us there. I do have for you our executive job search diagnostic form, right? So if anyone's interested in that, we have a QR code, and we'll get it in the chat, I think, and make sure that it's there for you. But you can download that, and it'll help you determine whether or not you're really ready to make that leap into that search, because that's something people often ask us is, gosh, I feel like it's coming, or I know it's going to take a while, but am I really ready to do it?
Yeah, no, that's great. And for those of you listening, if it hasn't become obvious to you, Michelle is the top of the game when it comes to landing these kind of roles. So thank you everyone for tuning in.
Thank
Thank you,
you for
Michelle,
having
for
me and
all
for
the
doing this. It's been such an inspiring series to watch all of our fellow top voice.
I'm
I
having a
bet.
great time,
You
and
can
we're
tell.
just focusing on having great conversations. To that point, please go to YouTube if you've missed other episodes. Michael J. Lopez 9. Go to the website that I have. I'll put it in the link to subscribe to the newsletter. You get all sorts of extra little tidbits for that come out every Friday. Thank you again. Have a wonderful week, everyone, and we will see you next week.